Now, we have this for you. Syria is resuming evacuations after a bomb killed more than 120 of the evacuees. Next case. One of President Obama's trusted national security staffers says he thinks Obama's mistakes in Syria left, quote, a more dangerous world. That staffer is here now, Pavel, I should say, Senior Vice President of the Atlantic Council. That's a public policy think tank that focuses on international affairs. Barry, you worked in that administration. Are you turning on your old boss, President Obama, and saying that he didn't do the right thing?
Well, thank you. Just to be clear, I worked also for the George W. Bush administration as a career civil servant, also in the NSC. So I'm a bipartisan criticizer where I think it's necessary. And yes, unfortunately, I think the perception of the United States under President Obama as not willing to use military force in significant instances, even though we had the capability, I think that emboldened adversaries to some extent to be a little more aggressive in cases, and that includes what China did in the South China Sea. I think Russia's coercive activities across the broad expanse of Europe, and certainly in Syria, Assad, never had a negative sanction, never felt constrained in killing as many civilians as he possibly could, including bombing hospitals.
Well, Barry, we're told, we heard, that President Obama drew the red line after Assad used poison gas on his own people, but then failed to enforce the red line, and we're told that he failed to enforce it because of pressure from the Iranians. The Iranians said, you go after Assad and you're not going to get a nuke deal with us. Is that accurate?
I have no idea whether that's accurate. I mean, I do know that the Obama administration was a little lighter on Iranian activities, including other destabilizing activities that Iran continues to conduct in key areas across the Arabian Gulf. And I do know that they sort of let up a little bit on what otherwise I think they should have had more pressure on the Iranians, because the Iranians wanted and needed this deal just as much as we did. So I don't think that's the way to link things.
Why did the Obama administration always soft-pedal the use of force, a strong military presence, a strong military point of view? Why did they do that?
I think it's an interesting phenomenon in our society and our polity where presidents come to office with a narrative. And the narrative that President Obama came to office with when he came in 2009 was, we're going to get us out of wars. And I think he was rightly, very careful about getting into new entanglements that would last a long time and sap our military. But that doesn't mean there aren't very important instances like Syria where you need to use military force in a limited way for very precise objectives and then get out where you can, or at least go to diplomacy, which I think you heard your previous speaker talk about.
Would you describe yourself now as a Trump supporter with what he did in Syria?
So far, I call that a down payment. It's a down payment on reducing the perception that the United States is not going to use military force for limited and important objectives. I think it's a beginning. I think there needs to be a strategy now attached to it that backs up diplomacy so we can resolve the Syria crisis, which is a direct threat to U.S. national security. And I think the Obama administration's mistake for a very long time was looking at Syria as a humanitarian crisis only, when in reality it's the global incubator for terrorism and extremism worldwide.
Barry Pavel, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Very interesting point of view. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.